Well, if there's one issue that hasn't had much attention in this election campaign, it's Indigenous affairs. 5 years ago, the troubled lives and horrific deaths of Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory were described as a national emergency. But the rivers of Grog are still flowing in Alice Springs. Now the man who buries the victims of alcohol is demanding change from businesses he says are making a killing, and says governments haven't done enough to stop them. Katrina Bolton reports.
Basil Shield is a pastor in Alice Springs. He's speaking out because he's tired of burying his friends.
A mother was burying her son number 5. All her sons she'd buried. All of them were alcohol-related deaths.
He says he's done nearly 80 funerals because of alcohol, and it's not just the drinkers who are dying.
Some of the coffins that have travelled through this room in which we sit, a 13-year-old girl whose stepfather would come home and get drunk and touch her up. She took her own life. A 26-year-old young woman whose partner would come home and get drunk and smash her up. She took her own life.
The rivers of Grog are still flowing in Alice Springs 4 years after a report on child sex abuse called for urgent action. The Territory Government has cut the availability of cask wine and banned takeaway alcohol before 2 p.m. But it still allows some of the town's bars to open at 10 in the morning, and behind darkened windows, hundreds of people hit the Grog before lunch.
It will be totally crowded, it's full. There are elderly people, some of them frail, sitting on the floor. There's hardly any air conditioning. The air is thick, it's hard to breathe.
The bar in the Todd Tavern, which is well known throughout the community as the Animal Bar, is a bar that's only open from 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock. It closes as soon as the takeaways open.
So busy is the Todd's Riverside Bar that the Licensing Commission last month suspended it for a week after CCTV footage showed 236 people inside when it was licensed for 100. GP and alcohol campaigner Dr John Boffa thinks bars like the Todd are targeting alcoholics.
The sort of people that need to start drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning in a public bar are likely to be alcohol dependent.
The other 2 bars are hidden. The Heavy Tree Tavern is tucked behind a supermarket on the outskirts of town. It's allowed to serve close to 150 people. And at the Gapview Hotel, their bar is completely unmarked. But the drinkers know it's there. Inside, the bar is open, but you can't buy food, even at lunch. And like the Heavy Tree and the Todd, even though it's allowed to stay open, it closes at 2 p.m, right when the takeaways open.
It seems as if the publican only wants to make space available for very heavy drinkers until they can sell them takeaway and basically get rid of them.
While drinkers are on site, licensees are obliged to make sure people don't get too drunk. But the businesses have no legal responsibility for what happens after the drinkers go on to buy large quantities of alcohol at the bottle shops.
If you do the figures, those major hotels must be making an absolute killing.
Foster's acknowledges that Todd and the Gap View are among their biggest individual beer customers in the country. Lawyer Russell Goldflam says they also feature heavily in court.
The horrible fact is that in the majority of the homicide cases in which I've been involved, cases where a killing was literally made, the perpetrator, the victim, the witnesses, they all bought their grog at these pubs.
Alcohol keeps Alice Springs police extremely busy with assaults, rapes and untimely deaths. The town's Indigenous people are 14 times more likely than other Australians to die from alcohol. Figures obtained by the ABC show that in 2008-09, the hospital treated nearly a stabbing a day. Russell Goldflam says the violence almost always involves enormous amounts of takeaway alcohol.
The standard killing, the victim was very drunk, the person who did it was very drunk, and the witnesses were all very drunk. The standard serious harm, the standard rape, also victim, perpetrator, witnesses, everyone's drunk.
He says the scientific literature is very clear about how alcohol consumption can be cut, but the solutions are politically unpopular.
Higher prices, shorter trading hours, a grog-free welfare payday, less outlets, a volumetric tax. It's not rocket science.
A lot of people are getting sick. A lot of people are dying. All my family have died from alcohol. The place where they buy alcohol, they wouldn't care. They like their money.
Senior Eastern Arundel woman MK Turner says it's time the government drastically cut the number of alcohol outlets.
Well, in my family, they just drank so much because alcohol is there.
Basil Schild says all the companies selling alcohol in Alice Springs need to take a hard look at the damage their product is causing. He's calling on the supermarket bosses and the CEOs of the companies that make the alcohol to come and meet the people on the flip side of their profits.
They would surely begin a conversation regarding their corporate social responsibility to ensure that their products are not reaping such total chaos.
The pubs we've mentioned all declined to be interviewed for this program, as did Coles and the two major liquor suppliers, Foster's and Lion Nathan. Foster's said in a statement that it's extremely committed to promoting a culture of responsible alcohol consumption, and Lion Nathan said in a statement that no responsible player in the industry wants to make a dollar from alcohol dependency. The Territory's Alcohol Policy Minister was also unavailable for interview. The government has announced it'll buy back 3 of the town's takeaway licences, but the Todd and the Gapview are not being touched. The government is preparing to make more changes to alcohol laws. Basil Schild and MK Turner hope it happens soon, before the cemetery gets any fuller.
Over here we buried another dear friend of mine. Very recently was lying drunk on the road just outside Alice Springs, hit by a car. Over here, another dear friend of mine, renal failure at the age of 39. Many stillborn deaths just here behind the tractor. Recently, this side, 2 suicides. Over there further, a dear friend of mine said to him, if you don't stop drinking, I'll bury you next year. We buried him next year.
You know, old people have stopped crying now. They got no more tears to cry.
Katrina Bolton with that report.